already winter preparation, because eventually it'll be winter again, even though it seems to be a long ways off. So I'm thinking you can see that.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm looking forward to August, which isn't that far away actually, and that's the end of the season. And then, you know, sometime in August there'll be a dearth where there won't be anything blooming, and it'll be hot and dry. That's when you have to worry about both robbing and worry about how you're going to do a mite treatment. You're going to remove your honey if there is sufficient honey by mid-March, by mid-August. Now the issue is the hive population will be dropping. It will have peaked in June, late June, July will be the peak of the population. The queen will start laying fewer eggs, and she will be getting ready in August and for sure in September for winter. All right, so September, you need to see if there's enough. If you took honey off and there isn't a good bloom, or they don't have like 60 pounds of honey per guesstimate per hive, then you'll want to do some supplemental feeding. For supplemental feeding, typically it's sugar water at a 2-to-1 ratio. The reason you're using 2-to-1 ratio is because they have less time to dehydrate it, to evaporate it, to get down to 17%, 18% water. All right. And you should be getting ready. It says in October, right? Time to prepare hives for winter. Actually, you start preparing for winter in August. I believe I have that someplace. Yep, right here. The reason is pretty simple. All right, let's see. And then after that, you do a final preparation for winter in November using oxalic vaporization or dribble method, and then wrapping your hive. All right, but why August? If the queen's laying 2,000 eggs a day and she's slowing down her egg laying in the fall, all right, it takes 3 weeks for a worker to emerge. So let's say she's laying eggs the 1st of September. Those bees won't emerge until late September, early October-ish. Those are your winter bees. Winter bees last, 4 months or so, 5 months sometimes. That they have to be healthy. All right, so she'll be making these winter bees in September and October. By November, typically she's done laying for the winter. She won't be laying any more eggs unless she's a Italian. Italians lay really late, but most queens don't. The key is that nurse bees have to take care of the larvae that will become winter bees. And those nurse bees need to be healthy. So in August and September, those are when the nurse bees are emerging to take care of the brood for winter. Remember, it's an egg for 3 days, a larva for 6, and a pupa for 12. Winter bees are called fat bees. They live, 4 to 6 months. I think 5 would be on average. And that's because they don't forage, and what they do, all they do is cluster and vibrate. And they are called fat bees because their fat bodies, they eat and actually get bigger with their fat bodies, which is like their livers. And they can live longer because of that. But to have healthy fat bees for winter, you have to have healthy nurse bees, because if the nurse bees are sick with diseases from mites, that transfers over to your larva. All right. So that's why we're going to talk about why in August, certainly by early September, you need to do a mite treatment of some type. Either Mite Away Quick Strips or Apivar, Formic Pro. I would not suggest oxalic acid because you need to get the brood that has mites, the cat brood. Okay, for winter you need about 60 pounds of honey around this area. And here is this supplemental feeding 2-to-1 sugar. You dissolve granulated sugar in there. Or you can do we talked about this earlier, the sugar board candy. I do both 10 pounds and 5 pounds, depends. So this is what the hive looks like in the winter. It's a great picture because it's thermal. You can see where the cluster is right here. That's the warmest part. They will cluster inside the hive. This is a thermal picture, of course, and generate heat. And then as it gets away, further and further away from the center of that cluster, it gets colder and colder, as you can see. That's a way to keep in mind what the cluster is doing inside the hive. So going back to this hive situation here, that's going to be a closed system unless you do things. You have the top here opened up, and the bottom, you'll have a space in the bottom. One other thing you have to worry about in winter is mice. So you'll want mice guards, or you want to make sure that this is closed small enough where a mouse can't get in, which is really small. Mice are, I can't believe the small areas that mice can get into. All right. So the hive's a closed system. Pretend this is the hive, the brood box. You have cold air coming in from the bottom. You have a cluster in the middle of the hive creating heat. And that cold air goes through the heat and it condenses and it forms moisture up on the top of the hive. That moisture drops back down onto the bees. You can see it here. Moisture, wet bees die very easily. They can't retain heat, and it's just really bad for them in cold weather. All right. So you need to prevent that condensation from dropping back into the cluster. You have to establish a chimney. There's various different materials you can put on top of the hive to absorb the moisture. People use sawdust. They use it's like a bedding material. I use those boards. They're moisture boards. All right. And then don't forget the outside top of the hive, because you want to make sure the heat doesn't escape from the hive to the surface. You'll be insulating the sides of the hive or wrapping the sides, but remember to do something with the top too. So this is sort of a ideal system, a chimney system. You have cold air coming in the bottom of the hive. It goes up through the cluster. You have some type of moisture absorbing material at the top of the hive. That can even be newspaper with granulated sugar on it, because that will absorb water. You want some space so that air can go up, and then you'll have an entrance at the top of the hive allowing the air to go out. All right, sort of like you're wrapping a water heater because you want to save energy. You want to do something with your hives. Some people wrap them with tarp paper, what's called tarp paper. Other people take them and put them out of the wind. The key is to make sure there's a wind block. I've seen people put hay bales next to them. I use a foam board. They sell blankets, insulation blankets that you can put on. They're kind of pricey. But you want to do something with the outside because the hive itself, the woodenware is like what, 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch pine, which doesn't have a really good R value. If the bees are in a tree, they'll have 4 inches or more in a circular fashion around them of like typically hardwood, which provides a better insulation. If you want it to go back to nature. So now what happens with the insulation is that it allows them to have, I believe, their cluster can be not so tight, and because they aren't so tight, they can move a little easier inside the hive, going to where the honey is, as they need extra food. All right, because they're a little warmer, they don't have to generate as much heat, and they're moving around more. Typically, you may want a little bit more honey in there, but I don't think it's really an issue. And they will break cluster and go up through that top entrance for cleansing flights. And they know, just because it's insulated, they know how cold it is outside and whether or not they can go out for those cleansing flights. All right. So here's where I had the wood pine. And I insulate my hives with this foam. You can also buy hives instead of woodenware. You can buy them that are made out of polystyrene. From 2 companies, Lyson and BMax, make hives out of basically foam that has a hard surface on it for the outside. Really good, a good situation for beehives. From what I remember, they're pretty pricey though. And this was, like I said, when this last year, when we opened up a hive, what they look like. You can see the hole up here letting the vent out. All right, and then there's the board that absorbs moisture, and these boards will get really wet in this area. And I've reused them since I've gotten the first ones I got was like 10 years ago. I buy more when I need more, but I've never thrown any away. They get wet and they get soaked, but then they dry out, until I use them again in the fall. That's that part. Okay. So do you have questions on that yet?
I don't have any specific questions. Since this will be my very first hive that I'm starting this year, I feel like right now I'm drinking through a fire hose. So I'm just trying to take notes and stuff. So you may be hearing from me in a couple months, but.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Did you order your bees already?
I did. Yeah, I ordered a nuke. I think that's what it's called, from Ebert Honey Farm.
Oh, cool. Cool. So you're just getting one, is that right?
Yeah, I'm just getting one. I ordered all the other pieces from Blair's Farm Fleet in Muscatine, and I have that all sitting in my garage. I'm going to start painting it next week, but
don't paint the inside. All right, just the outside. Right? Uh-oh. I lost her.
Where'd she go?
I don't know. I'm trying to get back to the early part here for her. Do you have bees, Janessa, already?
This is Angela. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, we're gonna wait until next year. Right now, we are kind of just in the research phase, and my husband's gonna try to build us some boxes this summer, and I'm gonna plant. Yeah, I want to take our time so we do it right.
Did he find plans online?
He's been just looking for them, but we haven't decided on any. If you have any that you recommend.
Langstroth is what I recommend. There's some
Okay.
other ones out there. There's a gentleman down who owns a construction company down in North Liberty that found some really nice plans for a cedar hive, and
Ooh.
what's called a natural cedar hive with 1.5 inch cedar.
Oh, wow.
The problem is it doesn't take removable frames, and it stacks differently. He thought it was pretty. I went down and looked at them. They were really well made, and 1.5 inch cedar. It was just fabulous work. He's a carpenter by trade, of course, and
Sure.
but then he had a lot of problems at the end of the year. So Langstroth hive plans, regardless of who's putting them out there.
Can you spell that for me?
Here, I'll even show it to you so you can find it. I think I have it here. They're famous. He's famous. Oh, I bet you it was up front. 'Cause, one of the first things I go over was Langstroth hives,
Okay.
because he and gentleman from Germany were. Yeah.
Oh, got
right
it.
here, Langstroth hive, right there. Langstroh. It looks like they all look sort of like this one on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Different sizes. This is all the 10 frames are exactly the same size. The 8 frames aren't. See if I have
Okay.
right here the 8 frames. I think I have so you can check. Yeah. The 10 frames are 16 1/4 by 19 7/8, and this is all in videos over at the library, so you can go pull the video up and look at it.
Okay.
Whereas the 8 frames are of 2 different sizes out there.
But you
I
said
would-
the 8 frames are probably better, right? Because
Well, they're not so heavy.
Okay.
Yeah, I would go with the larger 8 frame, the 14 by 19 7/8. That
Okay.
extra 1/4 inch inside makes it so much easier to inspect.
Sure.
They really do.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to get a nook. Are you back now?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So instead of, I won't go over how to drop these in, but you're going to have a brood box like this. You're going to have a few extra frames when you get your nook.
You know what? So I think I said the wrong thing. There's actually a brood box coming with it.
Right, but it's only 4 or 5 frames wide,
Okay.
and you'll be transferring those frames into your bigger brood box.
Okay.
And I want to see if I know I have a picture here of a nook somewhere. Right there. So this is sort of what it will look like. I don't know if he uses a disposable one or what he uses for a nook box, but you will have bees in here. You'll have a queen, you'll have eggs and larvae, and you'll have honey and pollen, which is really a good way to start. And you'll notice sort of how they transferred them over here into this box on the right, in the middle, right? That is really excellent. And then these frames on the outside are the ones they can then build up. If you look right up here, you can see where they made a opening for these 4 frames or 5 frames. It depends if they sell you 4 or 5 frames. Really good way to start a hive. It gives it a kickstart. When are you getting them?
I think they said between May 1st and May 15th.
Oh, cool. Because it'll be pretty warm then. Everything will be in bloom, so they should be able to take off pretty well for you. You should ask them if they were treated for varroa mites.
Okay.
You need to know that. Find out if they were treated. If they weren't, You're gonna have to figure out a treatment schedule. You're gonna have to probably test them or something a couple weeks after you put them in, because mites will destroy your hive. That's the biggest thing I can emphasize in this whole course is how bad mites are and the diseases they carry and how they wreck a beehive, and their pain.
Okay.
Um,
So if they have been treated, then I can kind of move forward, assuming that they don't have them, or do you think?
no, well, yeah, if they've been treated, you can wait you can wait until June. If they were treated, you can wait until June and do a test sample in June and see how the mites are. And if they were treated well, you shouldn't have a mite problem in June. You may have one in July though, because it's exponential. Once you get, every hive has a couple mites, and the way those female mites lay eggs, 2 today, and then 4, and then 16, and 32, and it just explodes eventually with mites. And in May, you won't have to feed them, probably, because there'll be a good bloom. You'll need to restrict the front, but then in September, you'll probably want to feed, and this over on the right here, you see this Boardman feeder?
Yep.
You won't want to use that feeder in September and October because it gets too cold, right? So this fluid, this liquid will get cold and they won't use it. So you'll want either a can feeder or something that's inside the hive that keeps it a little warmer. And these work pretty well, these top feeders. What we use, let me go back to where I think I got my dogs. You see this hole here?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Almost all your inner covers for your husband, if he's making inner covers, make sure he makes a hole in this. This is a winter inner cover. Let me see if I can find the summer inner cover here for you. There. This inner cover here, right here, B.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you see it has a hole, but it doesn't have a very good hole. If he
Okay.
makes the inner cover that you're going to use, and it has a hole, a circular hole that you can put a mason jar on it.
Uh-huh.
Then what you can do is basically it's like this feeder here. It's a mason jar. There's a cap that you can. I wish we were in the same room so I could show you pieces. Typically, I bring a lot of equipment in. There's a screw-on cap. Let me see if I can get one. So, mason jar, right?
Yeah.
This is I gotta figure out where it is. It goes on the top of the mason jar, right? It screws on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know that you can tell, but there's fine holes punched in here.
Oh.
There's very fine holes. So you screw it on, you have the liquid in, and you can put it on top of the hive, like where that can is, but in a hole on the inner cover. So it sits like
smart.
this.
Okay.
All right. And then you use a small, medium size box, not the deep, but a small one, and you put that around it so it's protected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can put your inner cover, or your top cover and everything on it.
Okay.
And that's the way you liquid feed them in in September, October.
Okay.
So you're using this mason jar thing. You can certainly use a pail like they did here, wherever it was, like here. Basically, all the big operations do that. Most of the people I know use the mason jar with the holes in it and put it on top. And they will, if they're hungry enough, they'll take that down in a couple days and you can refill it. Let's see if I can find that hole right there.
And then you would just put the 2-to-1 sugar solution in there.
Yep. Yep. And in the spring, you use 1-to-1 if you need to feed them. You won't need to getting them in May, but like I have, the weather this month is horrible, right? So they haven't been out, but they need food obviously because they're starting their brood. And then in April, it'll be warm, but it won't be warm enough all the time. So if they don't have enough food and I don't have sugar on there, I'll give them 1-to-1 sugar water in the spring, in April. In May, there's a bloom, so they'll be getting nectar typically, unless we have a really weird May, right? In September and October, it's warm enough where they can go get honey, nectar from goldenrod and things. But you want to sort of overfeed them so they make honey for the winter, because they need that for the winter.
Can you ever go wrong with feeding them too much?
No, not in the fall. You can in the spring because they're lazy. And they won't go out, right? If they can just drink sugar water, they'll do that. But you would rather have them go out to different flowers and things in the spring. In the fall, you can't overfeed them because they need to make, I'm assuming you aren't going to take that off. The honey that they make in September and October, you leave that for the winter. So let them create their resources.
So this year I wouldn't harvest any honey. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're having a nook. So they will start pretty strongly, right? They'll be, I'm going to say 2 or 3 times as strong as just a package, typically, because they'll have eggs already. You'll give them more space. You'll be putting extra boxes on right away, I believe, at least 1 extra box, a hive box. Coat your frames with beeswax to make it easier for them to make comb. Otherwise, they spend all their time and honey making comb. But I'm assuming that, let's say you coat the frames of beeswax and they make comb, and they'll be bringing in honey with a good flow, a good nectar flow. So they should have enough honey come August that you can harvest some. Now, that you sort of have to guesstimate about how much they have. You can look when you do an inspection. You can look and see, especially if you have I'm going to think by June. Yeah, certainly by June you should have put on a honey super, so you'll have a second brood box and a honey super, and anything in the honey super is yours. Okay, that's what you can harvest.
Got it.
What else? I jumped over some of this really quick for you folks.
Are there any books that you would recommend referencing that you really like?
Yeah, there's a couple. I will send you a name. I can't think of it right now. Of a book with a lot of, I like books with pictures because it's easier to see what them. She has some really good pictures in hers. She was a speaker a couple years ago at Iowa, the honey producers, and very, very well thought out book she has. Of course, Bee Culture magazine or Bee Culture online on the internet, great source I think it's the most understandable source. It's meant for hobbyists.
Yeah, I think I wrote that website down. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, but that just made me think of it when you were on one of those slides. Do we need a beekeeping permit or anything?
No.
Okay.
Where do you live, in Solon?
Mm-hmm. Or like a mile and a half outside?
No, you don't. I have one for bee laws. Like Johnson County, you can have them. We're in Johnson County, of course. In North Liberty, to show you how strange things are, North Liberty, you can have chickens, backyard chickens in the subdivisions, but you can't have bees, which is really strange. Coralville, you can have bees, but they highly recommend you don't. All right, and then in Iowa City, you can have any honey bees you want. You just cannot have the Africanized bee. So their law is really generous. And in Cedar Rapids now, all Cedar Rapids, they have a very good ordinance for beekeeping. Everybody can have bees depending on your lot size. It depends how many hives you can have. And as long as you provide water and a windbreak so that they aren't flying into your neighbor's yard. Cedar Rapids, which is a really conservative city, right, is allowing beekeeping now. So
pretty new, right? Because I know I'd looked years ago and I thought that we couldn't. And yeah, that kind of started this year. I looked and I was like, wait, we can do this where we're at now?
You're in Cedar Rapids?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You have a really good ordinance. It's well written.
Yeah.
It's only been there for a couple of years, I think.
Okay, that's what I was, yeah.
Yeah, which is, you can have chickens in your backyard disturbing your neighbors, or so I've heard, but not.
Yep.
Down in North Liberty. So yeah, you don't need a beekeeping license. I'm trying to think where that one site is. There's a site you should go to if you want to see.
I think I wrote it. Is it bee culture? Oh, well, you said beeculture.com when you were talking about the sublimation.
Right. What I want to look at is, it's probably earlier here where I had Bee Culture has a lot of good articles. You can find a lot of good articles on the internet. What I'm looking for, right there, fieldwatch.com.
Oh yeah.
All right. Really interesting. This happens to be Waterloo. I thought I had, maybe I took it out. I had one for Solon. But these are all beehives, and they show the radius around 1 mile. Surprised they didn't. Oh well. But that's fieldwatch.com, and you'll see all the beehives in your area in Iowa. Fieldwatch is a private company that the state contracts with. So they run like 20 states, information for like a whole bunch of states. So you actually have to type in Iowa, and then you can see. You'll be amazed at the number of hobbyists, because the big commercial guys don't put don't list their hives necessarily. It's sort of a form of competition for them, because if you have 1,000 hives and you don't really want to know, your competition know how many hives you have or where you have them located. So it's basically all the small, moderate guys and hobbyists. And then up in northeast Iowa, there are people that steal hives. That's been a bigger and bigger problem in Iowa, where somebody will come and just pick your hives up and take them, out neither farmers or somebody who goes to farmland puts 6 hives out there and, you know, visits them once a month or something. They'll come and their hives are gone. Or there's some established apiaries that have been leasing land with agreements with farmers for years and years and years. And they'll come, and right across the street, there'll be another 10 hives from somebody else. And that sort of ticks them off because if they're doing like spring honey, they get less spring honey, right? Because somebody else is also getting honey from the apple orchards or whatever. It's an interesting thing. For small hobbyists, it's not a problem. These are the guys with 10 or 20 hives.
Are you on beecheck.org by any chance? Or have you heard of that?
I'm not sure. What is it?
I actually don't even know. So Lauren is a friend of mine, and then we have another friend. His name is Dave, and he also keeps bees. He lives on kind of the other side of Solon, and so he was just telling us that he's registered on beecheck.org. So I haven't personally had a conversation about it with him. I just was just curious if you knew what that was.
No. Second. You can bear with me for a moment. This is sort of interesting. Let me share that with you. You don't see it.
We can see it already.
You can see the bee check?
Yep.
Okay. You can see down here where it says field watch. So bee check must obviously have these other ones on it. I'm going to just log in and see what it tells me to see. There's this is bee check, but it's actually field watch. That's where I live. I don't know how to look at the hives here.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, this is my area where I live. You can see that those are all hives in the area. Coraville. Right here is Solon.
So it looks like maybe a system that just flows through field watch.
Yeah, it flows through field watch. It's here. It says Iowa Apiary, and yeah, you could sign up there too. I signed up through field watch, but you can see there's a lot of beehives in Iowa, right? That are registered.
That's cool.
Not so many around Solon though. If you look, it's interesting. Out here, there's quite a few.
You probably know Ron Pittman, right?
Not sure.
I just knew he used to keep beehives. I don't know if he does anymore, but I thought he had quite a few, and he lives right by, just right on that Cottage Reserve Road. But I'm not sure if he still does it or not.
What's interesting about this is, you know, 10 years ago when I started, it didn't look like this. Beekeeping has become more and more popular, as you can tell from this map. It's pretty interesting. You're in a good area here of Solon. There's not much. I'm out near the forest reserve, so Buckeye Wildlife Management area. So there's lots of stuff out here. You've been down here in Iowa City, and you can see there's ones. Interesting. So bee check and field watch are related. I'm not sure who came first. What else can I tell you? I'm going to run a class on Tuesday, this next Tuesday. I'm done, I think, with all the official presentations, but I just want to run through questions that people may think of between now and then. You know, whether it's 15 minutes or a half hour or whatever, I'll answer any questions that people may have. Because I want you to be comfortable about what you're getting into. Make good beekeepers instead of bee havers. See, some people are. I'll tell you a story about a neighbor. A couple years ago, he worked where I work. He was pretty high up in the organization. He calls me up in like July one year, and he says, "Hey, I understand you have bees. Could you come over and look at mine?" Okay. About a mile away, I go over to his house. He has 2 beehives in the back of his yard that he put out there, I'm going to say in the April-ish, May timeframe, early. And I said, oh, okay. And they're out in the woods, which isn't necessarily good. You don't want them in the deep woods. You want to have some sunlight for them, but they'll still survive. He says, I just don't think this one hive's doing very well. So I said, when was the last time you looked at him? And he looked at me with this amazed view and said, well, when I put him out here.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I opened the hives up and I went through them, and the one was queenless. So I said, well, you can go over to Ebert's and get a queen and put her in here, and that should help this one. And the other one, I asked him if he ever checked mites, and of course he never did. So I recommend at least treat them for mites. So the very next year, I called him up and I said, and this time it was like in June, so a year later, almost a year later, I said, how are your beehives doing? Want to know if you need any help. He said, oh, we're moving to Texas. Do you know anybody that wants them? I haven't looked at them since we went out and looked at them last year. I went, oh, I'll check around. And there's a guy up the street here. I don't know if you hear Witty Kitty.
Yep,
both,
I heard of it.
The couple there, both were our veterinarians. And one, I don't know if they're still practicing veterinarians or not, but their son went to Iowa State, and then he went down to New Zealand and was a beekeeper down there for like a year, and he's come back. And I called Joe up and I said, Joe, do you want to get these hives? And he went over there and got them and took them up and took care of them. But that was a bee haver, you know. It was fashionable to have bees, so he went and bought a couple hives. He was never a beekeeper. I want to create beekeepers because they're livestock. They deserve better from us to take care of them, right? Otherwise, it's like getting a dog and not treating the dog any good.
I'm surprised they made it through winter.
Yeah, I am too. But he never took any honey or anything off of them. He just left them out there. So,
oh, wow.
They obviously had enough resources. Yeah, let me. Yeah, I moved it. I used to have some pages in here on Iowa bee laws. Let me pull up one more resource for you. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. So this is Iowa Honey Producers website. Central Iowa beekeepers have an auction and things. There's a section up on top here for Iowa bee laws. You see Johnson County, basically, oh, that's the city of Johnson. So I had more up-to-date information than they have. For Iowa City, you can just have bees. See, bees allowed, yes, no city code. Be a respectful neighbor. Africanized bees are not allowed. That's it. Which is pretty lenient. And Cedar Rapids has a really good one too. They actually have some regulations about giving water and windbreaks. Contact swarm store. Oh, they don't have it up. There's usually sure thought there was. Maybe it's on the calendar. In July, and this is something I recommend to you. July right here. Summer Field Day on July 10th. It's the 3rd, July 3rd. Walk-ins. So you can register beforehand. It's cheap to become a member. It's like $40 for the day. It's in Mount Vernon at Ebert's. So that isn't too far away. It's an easy drive. And there'll be presentations, and there'll be what Field Days is. They'll go out and inspect some hives and show you some hives, and show you how to look at hives. And then there'll be presentations, and I believe that includes a meal at lunch.
I think Lauren has already signed up, or she's planning on signing up for that.
Cool.
Yeah, she
Are-
told me about that.
Are children allowed at that? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay.
I can send a clarification out, and I don't believe there's a class for children, but I
Okay.
want to verify that first.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I'll do that, and then I'll send an email out to you as to what I found out.
Thank you.
So I recommend that as a good source. And the big thing is mites and inspections and record keeping. And if you have questions, give a shout. I'm around. Let me send you my. Here's my phone number. It's also on the Iowa Honey Producers, but so I'll send this out. I'll give you an advance warning if it comes up on my phone and it doesn't say who it is to me. I never answer it. So leave a message and I'll call you back. If I don't know who it is, I don't answer ever because there's just too many annoying calls.
I don't blame you.
I wish it was like the old-fashioned copper line system where you could ban people, but with online, but you can't. It's really hard to do on cell phones. And somebody, I try to guard what I put out, but somebody obviously sold my phone number because I get some really weird stuff. I hate it. But I've used this forever, so I don't want to change it.
I hear you. I have a New York City number and I get screened by people all the time. It's 917 area code, but I've had it for 20 years now, so I don't want to change it.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah. Okay. That's all I had. If you don't have any questions, we'll meet on Tuesday. But other than that, I'm open for questions. You can still have them.
I'm going to probably.
I did send that out, right? You did get it?
Yep.
Got it.
I'm going to probably go over everything that I wrote down, and I'm sure I'll come up with questions for next week.
Good, good. Like I said, my whole purpose here is to help people not be frustrated, not be scared, to know what you're getting into, not be overwhelmed, because the first year, I can tell you for my wife and I, we were overwhelmed. We went to a class on it, but it didn't really prepare us for what we got into, you know. We got 2 packages, and we're dumping the bees into and we don't know if we're doing it right or not. There weren't a lot of necessarily pictures of how to do it. It was a 8-hour class that we went to, and we learned from our mistakes.
I believe it.
So if that's it, we'll end it here, and I'll see you on Tuesday.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.